Picture this, you're at a party. Someone walks up to you and says, "So, how's work going?" And something inside you just deflates. Not because you're rude, not because you hate people, but because you already know exactly how this conversation goes, and you know you'll walk away feeling more alone than before it started. If that hits close to home, stay with me, because what's happening in your brain in that moment is genuinely fascinating. And it says a lot more about your psychology than most people realize. You're not antisocial, you're not broken, you don't hate people, you're just wired to crave something most conversations never actually deliver. Here's what nobody tells you about hating small talk. It's not a personality flaw, it's not shyness dressed up in intellectual clothing, and it's definitely not something you need to fix. According to research in communication psychology and neuroscience, people who find shallow conversation genuinely draining have measurably different cognitive and neurological profiles than people who don't. That's not a compliment designed to make you feel better. That's just what the data shows, and this is where it gets fascinating. Let's start with what's actually happening in your brain when someone brings up the weather for the third time this week. Your brain runs on dopamine, the neurotransmitter most people associate with pleasure, but which is more accurately described as the chemical of anticipation, of reward seeking. Dopamine spikes when your brain detects that something meaningful, novel, or stimulating is about to happen. And here's the thing, your brain is constantly running a cost-benefit analysis on every conversation. Is this going anywhere? Is there signal here or just noise? For most people, small talk passes that test easily enough. It's familiar, it's low risk, it keeps the social machine running smoothly. But for people wired like you, the dopamine system is more demanding, more selective. Researchers call this a higher need for cognitive stimulation. And a 2013 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who scored higher in openness to experience and intellectual curiosity reported significantly lower satisfaction in small talk interactions and significantly higher satisfaction in substantive, meaningful conversations. Your brain isn't broken. It just has higher standards for what counts as a reward. Think about the last time you got genuinely lost in a conversation. Really lost, where you looked up and somehow 2 hours had evaporated. That's a flow state. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi described flow as the optimal experience where challenge and skill are perfectly matched. Meaningful conversation can trigger it. How about this weather? Cannot. Your brain knows the difference and it votes accordingly. Now, here's a counterintuitive one. People who hate small talk are often the most socially attuned people in the room. That sounds backwards, but bear with me. There's a concept in neuroscience called mirror neuron activity. The brain system responsible for empathy, for feeling what other people feel, for reading the emotional subtext of a room. And research suggests that people with higher sensory processing sensitivity, a trait studied extensively by Dr. Elaine Aron at Stony Brook University, tend to have more active mirror neuron responses. They pick up on more. They feel more of the social data flying around a room. And small talk, for someone like that, isn't just boring. It's almost painful because you're sitting in a conversation fully aware that neither of you is saying what you actually mean, and you can feel the gap between the surface and the substance. You're processing the discomfort, the performance, the mutual pretending that this exchange is satisfying either of you. That's not social anxiety. That's social awareness turned up to a frequency most people can't hear. You're not worse at socializing. You're sensing more of it. And that's exhausting in a way that's really hard to explain to someone who doesn't experience it. Let's talk about acetylcholine because this one doesn't get nearly enough credit. Most conversations about personality and neuroscience are obsessed with dopamine, the extroversion chemical, the reward chemical, the life of the party chemical. But introverts and deep conversation seekers tend to run on a different primary pathway, acetylcholine. It's a neurotransmitter associated with calm focus, introspection, and long arc thinking, where dopamine rewards the quick hit, the witty comeback, the crowd laugh, the rapid fire social exchange. Acetylcholine rewards the slow burn, the idea that unfolds over 20 minutes, the question that doesn't have an easy answer. This is why small talk doesn't just bore you. It actively feels like the wrong gear. Like trying to drive a car in first on the highway, you're capable of so much more bandwidth, and the conversation is demanding almost none of it. The mismatch is the problem, not you. There's also something evolutionary going on here worth understanding. For most of human history, deep social bonds weren't a luxury. They were survival. Knowing who you could actually trust, not just who smiled at you at the campfire, but who would show up when things went wrong, was a matter of life and death. And one of the most reliable ways to assess genuine trustworthiness is through vulnerable, substantive conversation. Surface level talk doesn't give you that information. It's designed not to. It's social lubrication, not social connection. Some researchers in evolutionary psychology argue that individuals who were more attuned to authentic connection, who were more motivated to push past pleasantries and actually know the people around them, may have had genuine survival advantages in close-knit social groups. You weren't the odd one out. You were the person asking the questions that mattered. That instinct didn't go anywhere. It just now shows up as feeling mildly tortured at networking events. Here's something I want to be clear about, because this video isn't meant to be a flag to wave in anyone's face. People who enjoy small talk aren't superficial. They're not less intelligent, less deep, less interesting. Small talk serves real psychological functions. It builds social trust incrementally. It reduces interpersonal threat. It keeps the social fabric intact between people who don't know each other well yet. There is legitimate science behind why it works and why humans developed it. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I am saying there are legitimate neurological and psychological differences in how people process and respond to different kinds of conversation, and understanding them is genuinely fascinating. The problem isn't small talk existing. The problem is when people who hate it are made to feel like something is wrong with them for wanting more. One more thing worth naming: the paradox of the deep conversation seeker. People who hate small talk are often accused of being cold, aloof, or hard to know. And there's an irony buried in there that's almost funny when you see it. Because the same person who will give you a brutally honest, searching, real conversation at 1 a.m. about what they actually believe about love or death or meaning, that same person looks standoffish at a birthday party because they can't make themselves care about the traffic on the way over. It's not coldness, it's selectivity. It's a high threshold for what you let in. Not because you don't care, but because you care so much that you are not interested in the imitation version. The research on this is consistent. People who prioritize depth in conversation tend to score higher in measures of empathy, emotional intelligence, and what psychologists call need for cognition, the intrinsic motivation to think deeply and wrestle with complexity. You're not the one who doesn't care about people. You might be the one who cares the most. You just refuse to perform caring through a script that means nothing to you. There's a philosopher, Martin Buber, who wrote about what he called I-thou versus I-it relationships. An I-it relationship is one where you treat the other person as an object, a function, a means to an end. An I-thou relationship is one where you meet them as a full human being, where genuine recognition and connection happen. Small talk, almost by definition, is I-it. It's transactional. It's functional. It keeps things moving. And if you're someone who instinctively craves the I-thou, the moment of actual recognition, then you already know how rare and precious it is when it happens. That craving isn't naive. It isn't impractical. It's one of the more quietly profound things about how you move through the world. You are not difficult. You are not antisocial. You do not hate people. You're probably capable of loving them with a depth and loyalty that would genuinely surprise the people who wrote you off as cold at a party. You just know the difference between talking and actually talking, and you've never been able to pretend you don't. That's not a flaw, that's a compass. And the people in your life who found their way past the surface, those conversations, those people, that's where you actually live.